that the big one that you had all the information on? I didn't get a chance to follow up with that because life has literally been a blur since Thursday to today. I'm an undefeated coach. I don't know if you know. I won a spring game in West Virginia against Pat White. Then he retired the number 5, but also hang up the headset, pal. Okay. He is completely defeated as a head coach in college. I'm completely undefeated. So I haven't really seen. Was it the Falcons pick? What was the one that you knew there was going to be some shit to?
Here, I knew the quarterbacks were going early, Pat.
Okay. Got it.
I knew that Penix was in the conversation. I wasn't sure that he was going to go. I knew he could go. I had a feeling that Bo Nix was going to go. We knew J.J. McCarthy was going to go. So in my mind, I just knew that in the first half of the first round, there was a real chance that 6 quarterbacks were going to be picked. And by the way, if Penix had slid past the Falcons at 8 and the rest of the quarterbacks went the way they did, then there was the possibility that the Raiders would have taken Penix. So when we were standing there before the show, I said to you, it's going to be a big night for quarterbacks.
Yep.
And I said, there's going to be some big news. I had a feeling Penix could be in play at 8. I had a real feel that Nix was going to be in play at 12. I knew altogether that it was going to be topsy-turvy and that the quarterbacks were going to fly off the board, and they did.
Yeah, offense flew off the board. I mean, Chris Ballard, with our pick at the Colts, who said we just got the best rusher in the draft because of how offensive heavy the beginning of it all was. We're kind of hearing that my sense from around the internet is like there's 31 teams that are happy with what fan bases that are happy with what their team did. A lot of questions around Atlanta. Have you been able to snoop around a little bit into that situation? I know Kirk Cousins said he's super excited to work with Penix, and Penix just got dropped into this. He's a top 10 draft pick.
Yeah.
And now all he has to hear about is how dumb of a decision it is. So it sucks for Penix. We would like to let the world know. Have you dug around in that world at all? And what are other teams saying about that particular move?
You know, here's the problem. I got no problem with Michael Penix or taking Michael Penix. But there are some things about it that I think raise some questions. Number one, they were at 8. They could have traded back to, at the very least, number 10, gotten something from the Jets who had some interest in moving up in the draft. The Jets would have moved up. The Falcons could have moved back 2 slots, gotten an extra 4th-round pick at the very least from the New York Jets. That's number one. You could have moved further back if you would have liked that and really been willing to roll the dice that the Raiders wouldn't take Penix. Again, no issues there. And then I guess my question would be, you sign Kirk Cousins in March. If you know you're all in on Michael Penix the way they are, then why would you give Kirk Cousins $100 million before? Now, they had a lot of defensive needs, but in rounds 2, 3, 4, they took 3 players along the defensive line. So you could justify it that way and say, look, they got help up front and they solidified the quarterback position. And the whole thing with this franchise was after they traded Matt Ryan to Indianapolis, they felt like they had one quarterback and they never had any quarterbacks. And I think they were scarred by that, so much so that they wanted to address the quarterback in free agency. And then it was important to them, it was always going to be important to them, to address the quarterback position even more. They loved Michael Penix. Raheem Morris was a huge Penix fan. And so the way that they figured it was, we're going to lock up this position and we're going to make sure that we don't have any questions or doubts in this spot. Again, my number one question would be, why would you not trade back to try to get him an extra and pick up extra draft capital? Because you could have done that. They say somebody would have taken Michael Penix before 10. That wouldn't have happened. I'm just telling you, that wouldn't have happened.
Okay, so, I mean, Connor just celebrated because of pole catch from Penix, who was phenomenal. And we were all very confused about how Penix wasn't being talked about as a top 10 guy. You know, going into the draft, a lot of us that watched all of college football last year and saw the way he handled his team, his teammates, and the game. It's like, this guy is an NFL guy. Now we're staring down the possibility of not seeing him for a couple of years if Kirk Cousins plays exactly like how Kirk Cousins normally plays. But I guess what Orlovsky is saying from the message that he's getting inside the building is like, if he doesn't play for 2 years, perfect. We transition right into another quarterback. Now he'll be 26, I believe, at the time, because he's already 24 years old. But last year, a lot of backups played. So maybe this decision looks good around week 11 or week 12 if something happens. Nonetheless, you never know how a draft goes for anybody until we see how they play on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays.
Fridays.
Fridays now, Black Friday, we got a game.
Yep. And opening week, we got a game on Friday.
Oh, yeah. So,
yeah.
So,
hey, you know what the old expression is, Pat? On any given Wednesday. Any given Wednesday.
Yeah, especially if it's Christmas. You're asking to get got there. And so I'll be excited to hear what Fontenot has to say about it as it continues to roll on. But trading back, thinking he could get him later seems like a right decision. Matt Ryan, after he retired from the Colts, he would go on to kill Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
no.
Yeah, him and JJ just took him off TV.
They did, both of them.
Yeah, I think that's how it works.
Yeah, no, it is.
From the way
from us,
the way that it works is they did that. So hell of a run, Boom.
Yep. Good work.
Way to go, Chris.
You guys love it.
Wait, is Phil Simms also off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Thought I saw that.
I honestly, those two guys are legends, and they had an unbelievable run, and I have great respect for both those guys. And Boomer's a personal friend, love that guy, and mad respect for the careers in TV that they've had. Truly.
Amen. Boomer's work ethic is one we're all striving for.
Yeah.
But those two guys, end of an era.
Don't miss you, boy.
And we appreciate them getting to spend Sunday mornings with them. Legit, for shoot. Long time dedicated to football. We appreciate the hell out of that. Connor's got a question for you, Adam.
Yeah, Schefter, it felt like Joe Alt and J.C. Latham kind of out of nowhere flew up the board. Most of the mocks going into it had the Chargers taking a Neighbors or a Dunze just because they lost Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Were those two always, at least in your circles, going much, much higher than a lot of people thought? Or was that something that kind of developed on draft day, that Joe Alt and everything, they were going to go in the top 7 or whatever?
Hey, I believe that the Giants wanted Joe Alt to slide to them. That's my belief, that was the hope that he was going to get to them. And I think some of this quarterback talk for the Giants might have been a little camouflage to try to get somebody like Minnesota to trade up, because if they traded up to the Charger spot at 5 and gotten J.J. McCarthy, Joe Alt would have slid right to the Giants slot at number 6. And that would have been ideal for a team that last year allowed its quarterbacks to be sacked 85 times. And in my mind also, Jim Harbaugh was never going to go wide receiver at 1. That's just not what he's looking to do. He wants to hit you in the mouth, and there have been some talk that they like J.C. Latham an awful lot. They like Joe Alt, who was considered the top tackle. I think when you spoke to people in this league, they all were convinced all along that the Chargers were going offensive tackle. Now, there were some people that thought it would be Latham. There were some people who thought they could move back from 5 and it would be Latham if they moved back, but they just stood right where they were. They took Joe Alt. Now, again, his natural position would be left tackle. Rashawn Slater, whose option they picked up, he's a left tackle. But you know what? You got 2 great tackles, and you make it work. Maybe you put Joe Alt here at right tackle. He could play there, and they're just going to say, this is how we're building our team. Strong, tough, physical. You heard Jim Harbaugh that day, the day of the draft, say, why aren't offensive linemen weapons? We think offensive linemen are weapons. So everybody wants them to take Malik Neighbors or somebody like that as an offensive weapon, and instead they want offensive linemen. Exactly. You guys know the deal. What is that, Warriors, or what is that?
This is Harbaugh football.
Yep.
This is Harbaugh football. That's what it is. We started doing this after they ran the rock 32 times straight when Harbaugh wasn't around and say, hey, we're still playing Harbaugh football. So his first pick being an offensive lineman was maybe the most obvious thing of all time. Yep. Him singing Hail to the Victors in the War Room, also majestic over the weekend. A nice, the whole thing. He sings the whole thing in front of the whole, go blue. Yeah, and okay, all right. Yeah. Good performance.
You know what's funny about the Jim Harbaugh stuff? Like last week in Detroit, I'm watching ESPN, and they got these odds shifting on whether the Chargers will draft J.J. McCarthy. I'm like, where is this coming from? Now, the interesting part about
it was on your network, Schefter. Yeah. That was on your network. That would be you.
Well, it was coming like from. The odds were going way up on it all of a sudden. For some reason, by the way, we were talking about, you had me on from Ann Arbor 2 Fridays ago, and the odds on Drake May had gone up. And the truth is, the Commanders, the 2 quarterbacks they had in consideration at 2 were Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy. So Drake May wasn't going to. He just wasn't going to. He was going to go 3 to New England. But back to Harbaugh a second. What's interesting about that is what would have been really cool, and there were other teams that were thinking that this would have been cool, if Jim Harbaugh believed in J.J. McCarthy as the best quarterback in this draft class, as he said, as the best quarterback in the history of Michigan football, as the man who had the best pro day of any quarterback he's ever seen. Why not go take that quarterback at 5 and go trade Justin Herbert? And you could have traded Justin Herbert for, I'm going to make this up off the top of my head, 4 ones. 4 4 ones.
Okay.
Right?
Just off top of it.
And you know what? I wasn't the only one that had the idea. The Chargers couldn't do it because the cap charge for this year would have been about $64 million, and all the new money in his contract was coming due. And I think the Patriots and the Vikings had the same idea because both teams reached out to the Chargers to inquire about Justin Herbert and were flat out rejected before there could be any talk. So they thought the same thing that I did. Like, hey, you like J.J. McCarthy so much? Go pick him and trade us Justin Herbert. But they never even considered it.
Imagine Jim. Whoa.
Easy.
Justin Herbert, though, potentially a Patriot.
Look out. He was potentially a Patriot in the draft, I heard.
And now we potentially take him home. I'm just going to make this up. 4 ones off the top of my head. Could you imagine getting 4 ones your first year?
Sounds about right. If the Chargers were going to trade Justin Herbert today, what do you think the price would be? Considering
that's probably it.
Yeah.
4 ones.
Yeah, the Niners.
And a fifth. 4 ones and a fifth. Because that Jimmy Johnson trade card will come in somehow. And you're like, we need another 26 points. So we need a 5th rounder on top of the 4 ones.
Well, but when the Niners traded up for Trey Lance, it was 12-3. It was 3 ones and a 2. Right? For Trey Lance at the number 3 spot. So
and a player.
You have
maybe 10 ones. Yeah, you might need to give him 6 or 7.
Maybe 10 was. So, by the way, if I were the Vikings or the Patriots, I would say, okay, 4 ones, you got it.
We got a 6'5", handsome, fast guy, could throw the ball forever. The only reason why he hasn't been able to win is because seemingly, and I don't want to sound like this. I don't want to talk about these 2 men as humans, probably good guys. Doofuses making decisions in crucial situations. That team has had the lead with minute 30. Minute 17 left. If you go back over the last 3 years, I would assume more than anybody ever, and nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing to show for it. This year, it's different, though, because they're going to be able to do this one right here.
And by the way, and that goes to the Joe All pick. He wants to be physical. He wants to be tough. He doesn't want to be like the Chargers have been in other years, and that's the reason that they hired him, is to bring his brand of football to Los Angeles, to establish the culture that he wants. And the best way to do that was not by picking a wide receiver. It was going to be by picking an offensive lineman, unless, of course, he wanted to trade Justin Herbert, which they never considered doing.
Latham going to Tennessee sucks, though.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the deal down there? They seemingly have a plan.
Seriously.
I hate that. You fire Vrabel out of nowhere. I'm thinking, all right, this is the new Texans. We got idiots here. This is good news. We got dummies.
By the way, that division, Pat, and it's bad news for your team, that division got really good really quick.
Yeah, so did we, Schefter. Jeez. Wow. But you're right. It did get very good. What happened in Houston is not supposed to happen. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is an actual anomaly, this guy. And he's funny as shit. He's on these. Yeah, he's great. He's seemingly the perfect guy for them. And they turned that whole thing around. Will Anderson, D'Amico Rice.
Wait, one point about that I want to make also. Do you realize how fortunate the Texans are that they beat the Colts in that last game, which cost them the number 1 pick? Right? And then they go to number 2. Now, you can tell me whatever you want, but I'm just telling you, if the Texans had the number 1 pick that year, I believe they would have taken Bryce Young at number 1. But they didn't. The Panthers traded up to number 1, and they got Bryce Young, forcing the Texans to go C.J. Stroud at 2. And that also, I think, points to how you need a little bit of luck in the draft. Yeah. It's not always the skill. It's not always the evaluations. Sometimes you have to be forced into a decision that falls into your lap, like the Texans were, and they've made the most of it with C.J. Stroud, who looks like the best young quarterback in the league.
Yeah, of all time, potentially. Yeah, and then you're talking about the AFC South, good in a hurry. It's like Tennessee's doing it. They know exactly what they're doing and what they're trying to do. It's like, that's not great as we look down the horizon. They're getting an updated stadium, too.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be in a dump in the middle of one of the greatest cities of all time. That stadium was supposed to suck forever. No, nice stadium. Got a plan moving forward. Jaguars have Doug Peterson. I assume they're going to be good. But the Colts got better this weekend, too. We got the best rusher in the draft. Love that. D-But's got a question for you about the draft.
Yeah, I got a question. Obviously, we hear about it as a former draft prospect. Hey, when they're digging into your background, they're going to talk to your high school coach, custodian, the college. The Spencer Rattler kind of slide, and then the rumors and the reports coming out that maybe it has something to do with his QB1 stuff when he was way back in high school. Is there any truth to that?
You know what I think it was with Spencer Rattler more than anything else? The 2 teams that liked him most, in my mind, based on the people I spoke to, were the Denver Broncos and the Atlanta Falcons. And I think they had a mid-second, early third-round grade on him. And Spencer Rattler's big problem there was that the Broncos went Bo Nix at 12, the Falcons went Michael Penix at 8, and his two best options closed up immediately, which left him sitting on the board longer than a lot of people think. I think that had as much to do with it as anything else. You could talk about all the other factors, but there were some people on some teams, and I know this because I asked them before the draft, how high do you think Spencer Rattler's going to go? Mid-second, early third. Well, the problem was two potential landing spots closed up really quick, and that caused him, in my mind, to slide further than a lot of people thought he would.
Interesting how these little, games play, because they say you only need one person interested. You only need one team interested. That can make you a top 10 pick if one person is very, very, very interested. Shout out to Atlanta, Michael Penix Jr. in this particular draft, but that's happened a lot of times in the past. But if you have two people interested and then they're both more interested in somebody else, that's a bad spot to be. Doesn't matter how you get in the building, though. Remember that, Spence. Doesn't matter how you get in. Now, speaking of the building, San Francisco 49ers took a couple wide receivers early. What does that mean over there, Ty?
Yeah, Schefter, there was a lot of speculation going into the draft, whether it was, hey, are they going to re-sign Brandon Ayuk? And then all these rumors came out that Debo might be getting traded, and they obviously draft Pearsall. Can we assume that both of those guys are going to be staying put in San Francisco, or are they still kind of working through things? And is it possible that one of those guys is on a different team before the start of next year?
Here's where we're at with that, essentially. And by the way, I got one more story about that when we talk about just how strange the draft is before I answer the question about the Niners. I remember the year I was on the phone with the Rams in the second round, like, what are we thinking today? Like, there's tight end from, I think it was South Alabama that we really, really liked, Gerald Everett. Oh, we like this guy. We'd like to get him. And I'm on the phone with the 49ers. I'm like, what are you thinking in the second round? Like, oh, there's this tight end from South Alabama that we really like, Gerald Everett. And I don't say anything to either one. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be interesting to see who gets Gerald Everett today. I sit back, I watch, and the Rams get Gerald Everett, causing the 49ers to fall back in the draft. And in the fifth round that year, the 49ers took a tight end because they didn't get Gerald Everett by the name of George Kittle. So it worked out okay for them that particular year. But in regards to the wide receivers today, I think what happened is at various points during the offseason, they had inquiries about Brandon Ayuk, and they decided they wanted to try to sign him to a long-term contract that they're still trying to get done. They got a couple of inquiries on Debo. Nothing got close to getting done. And they said over the weekend, and I believe this is the plan, that the plan right now is to move forward with both those guys. Now, here's the deal. Ayuk has not signed that contract. He's headed into the last year of his deal. Juwan Jennings is headed into the last year of his deal. And Deebo Samuel is headed into the last year of guaranteed money on his deal that has 2 years left. So clearly, there are wide receiver questions in San Francisco that they're going to have to address. So they got out in front of it this weekend by drafting the two wide receivers that they did, including Ricky Pearsall in round one. And Ricky Pearsall, the funny thing is he wanted to go to San Francisco. That was the place he mentioned before the draft to a few people that he wanted to go to. He winds up there in a perfect spot for him, making some of the catches that he has. And now the Niners don't plan to move on from either of those guys. Now, could that change at some point? Sure, absolutely. And by the way, if there's a team that all of a sudden has a wide receiver injury and makes a big play, could you pry loose one of these guys? It's not what they would like to do. It's not what they're planning to do. It's not what they want to do. But clearly we know that there are some wide receiver questions out in San Francisco right now.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure it out, especially if somebody makes a good offer for one of those guys. I would
especially when you got to pay Purdy after this year.
Well, the Purdy is the reason why they're able to have all this right now, though. Because he's
correct.
Yeah, so right now they're able to have it all. But it is, that's not a light at the end of the tunnel.
No,
that's another train, brother.
Yeah.
And that is Brock Purdy's contract that is going to be gigantic.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's no hometown discount there because he was, the last pick in the draft, so he didn't get shit for the first couple years. So that's going to be a big one. Hey, let's go back to the number 3 overall pick. Connor has a question for you.
Yeah, Schefter, at 3 and even 2, what was the best offer? Because obviously Minnesota, there was a lot of talk of them moving up. Did they ever offer one of their, premier players? And same with even like a Raiders situation. Did they ever offer one of their top dogs, or was it just, the first round picks of this year and next year?
Connor wants me to say that the Vikings offered Justin Jefferson to get up to number 3.
Did they? Did they or not?
No, they did not. Okay. They did not offer that. They offered various pick packages to come up there. The Vikings had the most discussions with the Patriots. And On Thursday, I texted somebody in New England. I'm like, any chance this gets done? And the text I got back a few hours before the draft was 0 chance. 0.
Hell yeah.
So clearly, the Patriots were determined to stick where they were. They knew, like everybody else, that Caleb Williams was going 1, that Jaden Williams was going 2, and that they were going to be able to take Drake May. They talked to the Giants, and the Giants, I don't know that the Giants weren't for Joe Alt at 3 as opposed to the quarterback. I know we've talked a lot about them.
The Giants really wanted Joe Alt.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I think they wanted Joe Alt. That's my suspicion based on things I've heard from people. It's unconfirmed. I want to be very clear about that, but that's what I believe is they wanted Joe Alt there. And for the right price, if they could have gotten up there and it made sense, they could have done that. But New England never came close to dealing that pick. They were very consistent in the idea that it was going to take a lot for them to move. It was highly unlikely that they were going to move. And then the text came in a few hours before the draft, 0 chance they're moving. It was consistent all along. They always were going to stay.
Okay, so from what you said, the Giants all in on Daniel Jones, right?
Sounds like it.
We want to protect him.
Well,
and if we can't protect him, let's get him a weapon.
They can be. They're as all in as they can be. Let's not forget, they did bring in Drew Lock, who they like. And if Daniel Jones is healthy, yeah, they'd love to see him be healthy. But you're also talking about a guy coming off the ACL who's had neck injuries.
The eyes.
Durability's been a question.
The eyes.
The eyes, yeah, the eyes.
The eyes.
Yes.
We saw it, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
That was one of those Adam Gase-like press conferences. You know what I mean? Hey, you look refreshed, by the way. How pumped for you that the draft was over? Pretty pumped?
Yeah, well, it's always nice. It's to me, the analogy that I use is it's always like finishing finals at the end of the school year. And back then, you're off for a couple of months. Like what I've learned with this league is it's slower, but you're never off.